Los Angeles shimmered like a false god, golden, elusive, and hungry for new blood. Aiden Murphy, 26, had arrived with nothing but 2 suitcases, a film degree, and the kind of hope that burns too hot to last. He wasn't naive, not entirely, but he still believed talent could open doors faster than favors. That hard work might speak louder than whispers. His first job in the City of Angels was at Crosslight Studios, a boutique production company tucked into a glass and marble building off Sunset Boulevard. The place reeked of quiet power, assistants in black, glass doors that muted every step, and espresso machines that cost more than his college tuition. He was hired as a production assistant on a streaming miniseries called Evening Empire, working directly under Julian Cross, the studio's founder and a man who made intimidation feel like an art form. Julian was tall, silver-haired, with a voice like broken gravel and a gaze that cut. He didn't speak much, but when he did, the air around him froze. Aiden admired him, and feared him, too. Everyone did. But then came Naomi. She didn't enter a room. She arrived, 5 feet 10, tailored dresses, low heels, and a stillness that pulled attention the way fire pulls oxygen. Her voice was low, deliberate, the kind that left silences in its wake. Naomi Cross was Julian's wife, and the company's director of communications. Once a legendary PR strategist, her fingerprints were on half the industry's most iconic premieres. But in the last 2 years, she'd stepped back, citing creative burnout in a rare interview. Still, when she walked into a meeting, the room stood straighter. The first time Naomi noticed Aiden was during a Monday morning table read. Julian had asked for a line rewrite, brusquely. As always, Aiden, thinking no one would care what the assistant had to say, mumbled a suggestion. It was sharper, cleaner. It worked. Julian looked at him like he was a gnat. But Naomi glanced up, not smiling, just watching, measuring. After the meeting, she passed him in the hallway. Close enough for her perfume to linger. Bergamot. Maybe sandalwood, she murmured. You're not afraid to speak. That's rare here. Aiden smiled back. Too fast. He thought that was the end of it. It wasn't. A week later, she started dropping by the editing room while Aiden was logging dailies. Not often, just enough. She would lean against the doorway and ask, "Do you think that scene earned its third act twist? Or is it too manipulative to play a minor chord under that reveal?" He answered honestly, "Always." And she listened. The first message came on a Thursday night, 11:22 p.m. He had just microwaved leftover curry and was about to rewatch Heat for the 5th time. The notification blinked. Naomi Cross. If you're still awake, I'd love your opinion on a teaser cut. The Dropbox link is below. Don't hold back. He didn't. They exchanged 5 emails that night. Then 7 the next. The third night, she sent a clip and added, "Be honest. You see what others don't." That line clung to him. By week 2, they were texting. By week 3, the texts carried punctuation like curiosity. You ever wonder what people would make if they weren't scared of what it says about them? She never signed her name. The 4th week, after a production meeting ran late, Naomi stopped by the break room. Just the 2 of them. She watched him stir his coffee. "You know," she said, "Julian used to care, but somewhere along the way, ambition became armor. You don't wear that yet." He didn't know what to say, so he said nothing. She looked at him then, not through him, not around him, at him, the way only someone discontent with their current life looks at someone who reminds them of who they used to be. That night, he couldn't sleep, not because of lust, not yet, but because he felt seen, noticed, valued. He told himself she was just being kind. A mentor, maybe, a person who remembered what it was like to be young and uncertain. But some part of him, the part that had waited his whole life to be invited in, knew better. She wasn't just unlocking doors. She was building a hallway. And he was already walking down it. He didn't realize what that meant until 2 weeks later, when she asked if he wanted to review a teaser edit in her office. The room was dim, the door closed. He leaned over her shoulder to look at the laptop. She didn't move away, And that was when it began. At least, that's what he'd tell himself later. But the truth is, it began much earlier. It began the moment he smiled back in the hallway. It began the moment he didn't ask why a woman like her needed validation from a man like him. And when the collapse came, as all collapses do in LA, he would remember that. And whisper to himself, like a confession, I thought I was being mentored, not selected as ammunition. It started with emojis, a wink after a late-night comment about a scene edit, a smirking face after a joke he texted her about the lead actor's overly dramatic death scene, a laughing emoji when he called the studio's latest poster, Oscar bait with abs. Nothing explicit, nothing that could be screenshotted and framed. But something in the air shifted. Like the humidity before a storm. Like the sound a match makes just before it catches fire. Aiden noticed, but he didn't name it. Not yet. Naomi's texts grew more playful, more personal, not frequent, but always unexpected. 9:47 p.m. on a Sunday. 6:12 a.m. with a, couldn't sleep. This scene keeps bugging me. Then came the selfies. Not posed. Not seductive, but raw. Her in a hoodie, reading a script, her legs curled under her in the back of a studio van. Her fingers holding a wine glass. Captioned, to surviving another production cycle. She wasn't flirting, she was inviting. Aiden responded with restraint, but the kind born not of virtue, but fear. Fear of getting it wrong, of reading into something not there, of being the kid who mistook a handshake for a hug. Then came the wrap party, held in a minimalist rooftop bar in Silver Lake, under strings of Edison bulbs and the faint scent of overpriced lavender cocktails. Everyone buzzed with the jittery relief of a production finally put to bed. Laughter ricocheted off exposed concrete. Champagne flowed like it had something to prove. Aiden wore a suit he rented. Naomi wore black silk. They mingled, separately, at first. Then she appeared beside him at the bar. You hate these things, don't you? He smiled. I'm just here for the free shrimp. She laughed, not a loud laugh, a real one. It startled him. I'm headed back into the postroom, she said, brushing a curl from her forehead. Just to watch the final cut one last time before we hand it off. You want to come? He hesitated, just for a second. Strictly professional, she added, unless you want it to be otherwise. He followed. The post suite was empty, dimly lit, the overhead fluorescence swapped for warm track lighting. Aiden stood behind her as the teaser played, his breath aligning with hers in the stillness. She reached for the mouse. Paused the screen. This cut, she said, not turning around. Julian hates it. Aiden whispered. He hates everything the first time. She turned then, slowly, eyes unreadable, one hand still on the mouse. The other lifted, almost instinctively, to rest against his chest. Her fingers brushed the lapel of his jacket, then flattened, and just like that, he kissed her, not out of calculation, not out of ambition, out of want. It was a kiss that belonged in a movie, a slow burn exploding on cue. Her hand curled behind his neck. His fingers tangled in her hair. She tasted like gin and something darker. Her mouth moved with precision. Practiced but not indifferent. When they finally broke apart. Breathless. She didn't smile. She looked serious, studying him. Then she said, softly, he cheated first. I'm just making the sequel better. They didn't make it out of the parking garage. Her SUV was parked in a dark corner. Windows tinted, leather interior still warm from the LA air. She climbed into the back seat, pulled him with her. It was clumsy, urgent, full of need that felt borrowed from another lifetime. She whispered his name like it was a password. He didn't ask who she was remembering when she closed her eyes. After, she rested her head on his chest and murmured, "You're the only one who still makes me feel watched." Aiden stared at the roof of the car, breath slowing. The guilt didn't hit until the morning. He told himself it was a one-time thing, a mistake, a moment fueled by alcohol and adrenaline. But then she texted, "I didn't regret it. Not even for a second." And he didn't either. What he did feel was something worse than guilt. He felt wanted. No one had ever looked at him the way Naomi did. Like he mattered, Like he could burn the whole system down and she'd still choose him from the ashes. He didn't question why that was dangerous. Not yet. Because the story he'd been telling himself his whole life, the one where being good, being smart, being useful would be enough, was starting to fade. And in its place, a new story was being written. One where he was chosen. One where he was seen. One where he forgot to ask why. The apartment was in Culver City. Discreet and sterile, with minimalist furniture and no family photos. The lease was under the name of an assistant Naomi once called, the most forgettable woman in PR, a detail that struck Aiden only in hindsight. They met there every Thursday at 7:15 p.m. Right after Naomi's Pilates class and just before Aiden's pretend screenplay workshop. The windows were always closed. The lighting always dim. The rules unspoken but understood. Phones silent. No overnight stays. No talk about Julian, but everything else, fair game. Naomi brought wine, always French. Always dry. Aiden brought his half-finished screenplays. The ones he used to hide in a folder marked "Drafts to Forget." She read them in her robe. Legs folded like origami, eyes darting across the screen with the precision of a scalpel. "You write like you're angry," she said once. "Maybe I am. Good. The ones who play nice get silenced. The angry ones write history." And then she kissed him. Aiden started showing up late to staff meetings. He missed a deadline for the season 2 pitch deck. But Naomi covered for him. She always had a reason. "He's researching a segment for the new PR rollout," or "I assigned him to a sensitive task." No one questioned her. Why would they? Naomi Cross didn't make mistakes. She orchestrated. One morning, a delivery arrived for Aiden at the studio reception. Inside the box, a charcoal gray Italian wool blazer, a vintage watch, and a handwritten note that read, "Wear these when they finally let you speak on stage." His breath caught. He hadn't told her about his recurring dream, the one where he was accepting an award. Thanking people who never thought he could get there. The next day, she gave him 2 VIP passes to a red carpet screening. "Walk in with someone else," she warned, "but wear the suit. I want the cameras to see you." He did. That night, he lay in her apartment while she flipped through his notes. She wore his t-shirt, her perfume still lingering in the fibers. Aiden reached for her, wanting comfort, clarity, something, but Naomi pulled away gently. "You know," she murmured, eyes still on the page. "Visibility is currency in this town." He laughed. "You make me visible." She didn't respond. Later that week, a senior cinematographer, Eli, a man whose voice sounded like a director's chair folding, cornered Aiden during a set break. "Word of advice," Eli said, lowering his coffee, "be careful, you're not the first she's made visible." "What's that supposed to mean?" Eli shrugged. "Just that flashbulbs burn fast. And some lights, they're meant to blind, not illuminate." That night, Aiden couldn't sleep. He opened Naomi's laptop. She'd left it open to review a sizzle reel. An idle click opened the file tree. One folder stood out, emotional tone references. Inside, dozens of images, behind-the-scenes stills, mood boards, a few candid red carpet shots. And in the middle, a series of photos. Him, and her, laughing on the couch, him shirtless in bed, turned away from the lens, her hand on his chest. The file names were innocuous, reference _1A, color temp test 3, but they weren't. His throat tightened. He didn't want to believe it, didn't want to ask, but he did. "Naomi," he said the next morning, "why are there photos of us filed with press material?" She didn't flinch, just tilted her head and smiled, calm, knowing, almost maternal. "In this town," she said, "if you're not holding the story, you are the story." He stared. "You think Julian hasn't done worse? You think I don't know where the bodies are buried? I'm just making sure no one rewrites my chapter without my input." Aiden stepped back. "So this, all of this, was part of your plan?" Her voice softened. "No, Aiden, you were just the part that made it feel human." It hit him then, the unbearable weight of context. He wasn't her co-star, he was her proof. And somewhere deep inside, The part of him that once believed in fate and film and being chosen started to fray. Because maybe Eli was right. Maybe he was never lit up. Maybe he was just burned. The leak didn't come with fireworks. It arrived like a whisper in a theater, too soft to catch until the lights were up and everyone was staring. An anonymous email landed in Julian Cross's inbox on a grey Monday morning. No subject, no sender, just a zipped folder with the sterile label, redacted evidence. Inside, a cold, clinical sequence of files, date-stamped images of Naomi entering the Culver City apartment, security camera footage of Aiden following 20 minutes later, head lowered, baseball cap pulled low, a grainy screen grab from an editing suite, Aiden kissing Naomi. Her hands resting on his neck. No nudity, nothing overtly sexual, but the images didn't need to be graphic to scream betrayal. Intimacy, in this context, was a weapon. And then came the audio. A shaky, clearly doctored voice memo. Naomi's voice, fragmented, yet devastating. He said I made him feel seen. I didn't know how to say no. He kept pushing. Edited, spliced, intentional. Julian didn't scream. He didn't confront. He strategized, filed a PR directive, contacted legal, called in favors with publicists and crisis consultants. By Thursday, the studio lot, usually abuzz with the fever dream of fiction, was drowning in something far stickier, real scandal. The media advisory read, Director Julian Cross responds to personal and professional betrayal. The press conference was held in the company's theater room. Velvet curtains, rows of velvet chairs, cameras aimed like rifles. Julian stood alone at the podium. Face grave, suit sharp, voice a shade too calm. In this industry, he began, trust is more valuable than talent. And today, I come before you not as a director, but as a man betrayed. Then came the bombshell. Aiden Hale, a junior production assistant, engaged in a sustained manipulation of my wife and colleague, Naomi Cross. This was not a relationship. It was coercion. Gasps cut through the room like scissors through silk. Cameras flashed. Microphones surged forward. Julian continued, tone unwavering. We have documentation suggesting emotional blackmail, exploitation of power, a calculated breach of both marital and professional trust. He played the audio. The room turned. Reporters scribbled. Some shook their heads. Others just watched with thinly veiled awe. A real-life scandal unfolding like a movie. Naomi issued a statement through her publicist within the hour. I was lost. He saw that. He used it. 16 words. Surgical, sympathetic, legal proof. She gave no interviews, no comment beyond that single line. No attempt to clarify, or to correct. Aiden, meanwhile, was already being escorted from the studio lot by 2 security officers. His ID badge stopped working. His company email account was deactivated. His parking privileges revoked. An HR email followed. Effective immediately. Your contract has been terminated. You are not to return to the premises. There was no discussion, no appeals process, just silence, and a growing sense of erasure. Over the next 72 hours, his name was removed from every digital asset. His contributions to recent projects were quietly reassigned. Credit lines were edited, IMDb entries modified. Even his email signature, the one he had obsessed over, was gone from every archived thread. Then the internet woke up. Twitter trended with #StudioSnake. Reddit threads ballooned with theories. Anonymous accounts posted screenshots, some genuine, others grotesque forgeries. Even Aiden's old college YouTube videos were unearthed and dissected. A tabloid ran with the headline, "Director's wife seduced by ambitious assistant," or was it the other way around? His phone buzzed relentlessly, notifications, messages from people he hadn't spoken to in years. Some curious, some cruel. He texted Naomi, no response. He called, straight to voicemail. He went to the Culver City apartment. The blinds were drawn. The buzzer now listed a different name. No sign of her, no trace of what had been theirs. Naomi had vanished, airbrushed from the frame. just like she'd once done with countless marketing campaigns. But she had done it to her own life. And to his. The worst part wasn't the job loss, though it stung, or the online attacks, though they cut deep. It was the ambiguity, the emotional whiplash of not knowing. Had she ever cared? Had anything between them been real? He replayed old conversations in his head. Her hands in his hair. Her voice whispering about betrayal, passion, revenge. Had he been the weapon, or just collateral? He checked into a motel off the 101. One with buzzing lights and sheets that smelled like bleach. The TV flickered static. He didn't turn it off. He lay there in the dark, thoughts circling like vultures. Did I matter? Was I loved? Or was I just the plot twist? By sunrise, his name was no longer trending. But the damage had already been written in ink. The camera had moved on. The spotlight had dimmed. And somewhere in the margins of someone else's screenplay, he'd already been forgotten. The world didn't end for Aiden. It just shrank. From studio lots buzzing with caffeine and camera rigs to a narrow alley behind an indie production house in Koreatown. His new workspace reeked of burnt cable, expired ambition, and silent judgment. He was a field assistant again. No more producer credits. No whispered praise in the editing bay. No late-night brainstorms where ideas danced like fireworks. Just cables to coil, coffee to fetch, errands to run. His badge was plastic, his name fake, and his place in the credits nowhere to be found. His new name, Eli Ward, was borrowed from a dead uncle and made official by a DMV clerk too bored to ask questions. It suited him, anonymous, discardable. His apartment was a crumbling two-bedroom shared with three aspiring somethings who existed like ghosts, no greetings. No good nights, only notes scrawled in ketchup on fridge doors and unspoken rules about noise after midnight. His meals were what the city allowed, instant ramen, stale bagels from craft services, and once, half a sandwich an actress left behind during a shoot. He told himself it was temporary. That was 2 months ago. He didn't write anymore. At first, it was practical. No one wanted stories from a scandal. But it became something deeper, like a muscle that had atrophied from disuse. He would sit, pen in hand, a sentence blooming in his mind, then wilting before ink touched paper. Some nights, he'd walk to Griffith Park and watch the skyline. The Hollywood sign used to pulse with promise. Now it looked like a warning label. Then, without preamble, came the email. No sender, no greeting, just a subject line. He saw the betrayal. You only saw the bed. Aiden stared at it for hours. He knew who it was from. Not Julian. He wouldn't be so poetic. Not Naomi, at least not directly. But someone who knew, someone who still cared enough to remind him what he was, not a victim. Not a partner, just the plot device. He deleted the message, emptied the trash, closed the laptop, but it lingered in him like an infection that didn't scar the skin, only the soul. Weeks passed. On set, Aiden stood just off camera during a love scene between two actors with symmetrical faces and empty eyes. The director yelled, "Reset," 5 times. By the 6th, something fractured in him. It wasn't the acting, it was the way the male lead looked at his co-star, an almost reverent hunger. It was the same look Naomi once gave him in that dimly lit editing suite. Back when he thought he was special. When he thought he was hers. Admiration, manipulation, he could no longer tell the difference. He walked off set. No one noticed. That night, he pulled a forgotten notebook from under his mattress. The leather cover was creased, worn, ghosted with the scent of Naomi's perfume. A scent that lingered in fibers, in memories, in marrow. He turned to the last page he'd written. Blank. He stared at it, picked up a pen. Nothing came, no rage, no insight, no poetry, just the silent certainty of emptiness. He turned the page, another blank, and another. He felt like a book that had once promised everything, and delivered silence. He closed the notebook, stared at the wall. The voices came not from outside, but within, quote fragments, floating like wreckage from a shipwrecked dream. She said I was her revenge. But I became the one punished for both. In Hollywood, everyone plays someone. I just didn't know. I was cast as the fall guy. She looked at me like a script she already knew the ending to. I was just the punctuation. The next morning, he returned to set, held boom poles, sorted extension cords, ate silence for lunch. The assistant director asked him to stay late. He nodded. No hesitation. No questions. He was still in the story. Just not as the hero. Maybe he never had been.